This week I recorded an interview with my uncle Bruce Flanders. Bruce Flanders is the announcer at Industry Speedway. He'll be announcing the Gumball Rally this weekend, March 10th and 11th. He's also the voice of the Long Beach Grand Prix. Bruce will also be inducted into the Trailblazers Hall of Fame in April. Now here's an interview with Bruce Flanders. Are you announcing at the Gumball Rally this year?
Oh yeah, yes. I've done not every one of them, but most of them have been my announcing gigs. Yes.
How long have you been announcing at Industry for?
Since they opened the doors, I think this would be like year. I'm bad on the math on this, but I think this is the start of the 14th year.
I love the facilities there. Real restrooms,
Yes,
great snack bar, and an awesome bar.
yes, yes. And the awesome bar, especially when you stop and think about it. I don't know how many other racetracks you've ever been to that have been owned by the city, and the city also runs a bar. It's just kind of an unusual combination to me. One of the very first nights that I was there, an older gentleman, and that's how I now refer to them because I'm in that category. An older gentleman came up, and I used to announce in what was called the rodeo announcer's booth. There's a nice, very quiet booth up there where you can't see the start finish line, you can't hear the crowd, and that's what I need to hear. But anyway, here comes this old boy with a drink in his hand. I said, "Well, sir, you're in the pits and you're not allowed to drink in the pits." He says, "I'm a council person here. I used to race motorcycles with Bud Eakins." He says, "I can drink at this racetrack if I want to." And I said, "Got me convinced, right on." So then I could drink too. That's what I figured. It gave me a license to do.
The internet audience is pretty big too for Industry, which is kind of unusual to have a live streaming event.
And it makes it unusually difficult for the announcer in this respect. You're working two different audiences. One might be in New Zealand and the other one's sitting 5 feet behind you. The guy 5 feet behind you might come up with something good. The guy in New Zealand, I wish I could figure out what would be the answer to his questions. But you're working two audiences. I do the best I can. I figure honestly at certain points in the evening, especially with high engine noise levels, that the internet people can still hear me, and the people in the grandstands are hearing, so they don't really count at that moment.
Especially the audience on the backstretch there at Industry.
Yeah, yeah. I talk to them all the time, and the people on the internet wonder where the hell are they?
Do you remember your first announcing gig?
At a professional level, it was Costa Mesa, Friday the 13th of June, 1969, and I was co-announcing with, and this will be good for the hardcore boys that follow Speedway history. My co-announcer was Pee Wee Cullum. Pee Wee Cullum was one of the four Americans who rode in Europe in the 30s. He, Jack Milne, Cordy Milne, and Lammy Lamoureux were the four guys. And they were, he was knowledgeable as heck. We were all trying to figure out what was going on the first night of Speedway at Costa Mesa. There were three promoters. Not everybody knows this. There were three, a triumvirate. There was Jack Milne, there was Harry Oxley, a young Harry Oxley, and a guy by the name of Gene Ryan. Gene Ryan was the shop foreman at Jack's motorcycle shop in Pasadena.
So after Costa Mesa, yeah, you went over to Ascot to announce.
After Costa Mesa, I was, after my very last time, I went to help your grandpa at the Bonneville Salt Flats. And when I came back from the Bonneville Salt Flats, Larry Huffman was in announcer at Costa Mesa. So I wasn't going to run like I wasn't announcing it. And I rode for Butch Fairchild, Jerry Fairchild's son, who had several JAPs. And I think that every young kid coming up should try to ride a JAP some to find out that the stuff they're on right now is really smooth. And the stuff that they rode in the old days wasn't. But the next announcing gig was actually when Lions Drag Strip in Long Beach area built a night motocross. I had called them because they were going to have an all motorcycle drag race. And I thought, I can tell the difference between a Triumph and a Harley with my eyes closed, just listening. And they didn't need a drag racing announcer. But he says, hey, we're building a new one down here. And I announced the second one at Lions Drag Strip, which was the first facility ever built in the United States for night motocross and night motocross only. And at one point, we were drawing 450 to 500 riders on a Friday night and utilizing 5 ambulances. And there were times that we had to stop the ambulance. And as soon as I could see one coming back from the announcing booth, I go, okay, there's an ambulance. And we start racing.
You rode Speedway for 4 years?
Yeah.
Did you have anybody that you race against that would race you really hard?
Mike Connolly would come in and rub your left boot with his front wheel. That was to let you know that next time he was going to knock you right the hell off of that motorcycle. But now that I'm rubbing your boot, you know I'm wanting by. And it took me a couple of races to figure out that message. Mike Connolly, I'm not trying to imply he was a dirty rider, very capable rider, but I was not the fastest guy. In like 1972, I think, or 3, I ended up 19th in points. I went to all the other racetracks. Costa Mesa would only run me in second division. The other tracks would run me in first division. And it was Digger Helm, the promoter in Bakersfield, who came up to me one night and said, hey, you'd be doing the sport a lot more good as the announcer, not as a rider. He says, I got riders coming out my ears. He said, I need an announcer. So I went back to work at Bakersfield as the announcer, which I still had a lot to learn as an announcer.
What was your first non-Speedway event you announced?
Think about that. It was motocross, I think. Well, actually, in a purely amateur basis, when I was about 14 years of age and helping my dad at Bonneville, the Southern California Timing Association put me on a microphone at the start line at the Bonneville Salt Flats, talking to the rubbernecking spectators who would come in off the highway going, what the heck's going on here, Martha? Look at that funny machine. And I was the one who would go, well, that's Andy Granatelli in a Chrysler 300, yada, yada, yada. And I was reading a card file and trying to add in stuff that I had. But non-motorcycle, when I first went into cars was because of Sandy Reed, who was the announcer and owned the PA system at Ascot when I was a very young man. And Sandy Reed got me gigs at Riverside. Heck, by 1973, I was announcing NASCAR, what they now call Monster Cup. I was at the top of the line in NASCAR and didn't know why. One of the main reasons is I would do my homework and try and figure out what it was that I was talking about. And then I would look at the audience and try to decide how to approach them. And you approach an audience in Levi and Strauss a lot different than you approach them when they're wearing Brooks Brothers.
What was the weirdest gig you've ever announced or done?
Boat race at Miami Marine Stadium. And it was a double bill, Grand National boats, which were up to 427 cubic inch American V8s in a typical ski boat kind of hull. And it was the unlimited hydroplanes. Most of the unlimited hydroplanes at that time were using the giant Rolls-Royce V12 airplane engines. And when it came time for the main event in unlimited hydroplanes, there was only one boat left that would run. And the promoter brought that one boat out and had me introduce it as the main. And it went one lap and broke. And it's my fault. I mean, the crowd was booing, and I thought, they're booing, and it turns out they can boo. They're not booing the announcer. No, they're smart enough to know it's not the announcer's fault. All them stupid $high boats broke. Anyway, it was a kind of a weird learning experience, especially since I'd never even been to Miami before.
Will you be announcing the Long Beach Grand Prix this year?
Yes, 41st time for me. They were already on their third year when I got hired the first time. But yeah, I'm there again.
Do you go there with any polish to polish your plaque on the Walk of Fame?
No, he makes us do it.
we made a joke when they put, because the little plaque in the Walk of Fame is aluminum. They figured if they used anything expensive, that people would just pry it the hell out and it'd be gone. But aluminum discolors when people urinate on it. I found that out.
Going back to Speedway, do you remember how you got your tonsils out?
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. Wow. When I served in the Army, I would get tonsillitis. The Army didn't want to take my tonsils out because it's not an easy operation, and I was a draftee and I'd be gone. After I got out, I had to have a tonsillectomy. I had to pay for it out of my own pocket. And one of the nurses there turned up later at one of the Speedway races I was at. I was amazed how you cross over. Just this year, I had to have an operation on a skin cancer thing on the top of my head. And the doctor had heard me announce at Sears Point, and the nurse in the operation, her dad used to take her to Speedway motorcycles at John Lattiser's track in San Bernardino. I run into people now all over everywhere who remember me from when we were both younger.
What was your first car you ever had?
A 1958 Ford with a 332 cubic inch V8 Police Interceptor motor. Your Uncle John was the one who said, boy, this is going to be great. By the time it was a week old, we found out that they'd stuffed bananas into the transmission so that it would sound quieter. And I had to rebuild everything. I had to rebuild engine, transmission, differential. One time I put the whole transmission back together again late at night. I left out the synchro ring to third gear. Now, it's not a 4-speed. It was only a 3-speed in those days. But you leave out the synchro ring, you got to double clutch it. You learn how truck drivers went through it in the old days. It's 58 Ford, fast little son of a gun. It was ugly. 58 was the first year that they went to 4 headlights. And it was like, obviously, they decided later we're going to do 4 headlights because it didn't fit. They also came up with the Edsel at that time, and that was ugly too.
Was it faster than my dad's Nova?
Your dad had some very fast equipment. He had a Chevrolet. Your dad at one time owned both ends of the B stock NHRA national record. Both ends. That means miles per hour and ET. No, he had some fast stuff. He had stuff in drag racing. He had stuff a lot faster than I ever had.
What was your weirdest job at Flanders Company growing up as a kid?
The weirdest job was when I was in like the 5th grade. Your grandmother would say, somebody needs to clean off the front walk. Well, I'd clean off the front walk, but you know, I'm the lazy guy. I'd take the hose and just wash the walk off. Well, there were 2 cars parked there. The 2 cars that were parked there got a little bit of overspray splash on them. Turned out they were the guys who worked at the Railway Express next door. And they came marching to my dad and said, you know, there's water spots on my car and everything. And he says, and you guys park in front of my business every day and leave them there all day long. I said, do I care? Park further away from the curb.
Was there a Formula One race you did one time in Las Vegas?
I did Formula One in Las Vegas. I did Formula One in Long Beach the first few years up until and including 1983, were Formula One at Long Beach. Went to Formula One when they had it at Caesar's Palace for 2 years. I didn't know that Caesar's Palace has a staff of at least a dozen interpreters who work there full time. And they assigned me an interpreter who was capable in 16 languages. I get, you know, English, Spanish, German, French, whatever. This lady's job was to make sure that the official announcements were delivered also in French and in Spanish. It was an interesting gig all the way around. I mean, I'd never had a grand marshal of a race be Joan Rivers. She was a hoot.
When Speedway was running in the 80s, like 6 nights a week, how many nights were you announcing?
4.
And what were your tracks back then? Irwindale?
Well, Larry Huffman and I traded off back and forth several different years at Costa Mesa and at Irwindale. Bakersfield, I did most of the announcing there. San Bernardino, from the second year on, I did that announcing. I announced some of them in Lancaster. I announced some of them at Ventura at the fairgrounds. And they moved the racetrack from San Bernardino downtown out to Glen Helen. I did Glen Helen. And then I'd do those individual ones, the guys who were going to promote once and Never Again, the Date Festival in Riverside, things like that.
Do you have any announcing plans this year besides Industry and the Long Beach Grand Prix?
Still putting everything together. Hopefully, Irwindale's got about 18 gigs or so that would fit my schedule pretty well. Industry, as you mentioned, Long Beach. And then surprisingly, not everybody thinks I died. So occasionally I get phone calls and do weekends at some interesting places, but I'm not going to Canada or England anymore or Germany like I did in the years gone by.
Where was the furthest place you traveled?
Well, the very first time I traveled anywhere was to go to Sacramento to do Hangtown for the Dirt Diggers North. And I did like 20 years worth of Hangtowns. Furthest I traveled was to Lausitzring in Germany, which used to be in East Germany. It's a fabulous facility built by the federal government of Germany. And it's a giant oval, and it's a road course, and it's all concrete and fresh, and it's pretty trick. But Lausitzring, Germany is the furthest I've traveled.
Where's your favorite place to eat ever?
In-N-Out.
In-N-Out.
What'd you get?
Oh, yeah. What do you order?
Cheeseburger, extra grilled onions, fries, and a root beer float.
Do you remember Ernie Junior's on Colorado?
I used to when I was younger. I used to cruise Bob's Big Boy too in my street machine. Worst food I ever ate at a racetrack. Something that those British people at Coventry called a cheeseburger. Pooh, they don't know about cheeseburgers. I think they boil them.
What racetrack had the best food?
The very best food was at Laguna Seca Raceway, IndyCar weekends or IMSA car weekends. The next best food is Industry.
Wow. Why should someone tune into Speedway now?
I think that the sport is ready for another wave. My dad used to have this idea that motorsports keep changing. And he said it's similar to the way women's shoes keep changing. Sometimes spiked heels are in, sometimes it's Crocs. You never know for sure, and things change around. Speedway, due to its closeness to the spectator and its simplicity of equipment, makes it into a fun type of thing. And when I say simplicity of equipment, I mean to stay in comparison to an Indy car or a Formula One car where 17 guys come over the wall to do a tire change. Here you got one guy wrenching on the bike. It's kind of like watching basketball. You might have 10 of the best athletes in the world out on the court, but there's just one little basketball, and it's pretty simple, and the nets are too. But it's fun to watch, especially when it's done well. And Speedway could be on the brink of another resurgence. And if that happens, it'd be great to be a young kid on the ground floor.
Are you doing both days of the Gumball Rally?
Yeah, I do both days.
Any young kids you're looking forward to seeing on Sunday?
Sunday is a chance to. I have watched some of these kids, like Michael Wells. The first time I saw Michael Wells ride, he was maybe, 8 years old, 9 years old. And all of a sudden, here's Michael Wells. He's taller than I am now and going well. There's a whole bunch of them like that I have watched progress from crashing every second time they went out onto the track to now giving Billy Gennaro a pretty bad time when he comes down. And that's one of the things I look forward to. Not that I love Billy Gennaro and the way he rides, but I'm waiting for some of these young kids to beat him heads up with no accidents or anything else affecting it, that they just outrode him because he's a tough customer to outride.
It's been pretty amazing. We've only had 3 AMA champions in the last 20 years. Billy Gennaro, Billy Hamill, Greg Hancock. Who do you think the next AMA Series champion will be?
Oh, that's a crapshoot. I mean, if I'm going to pick anybody, it's going to be Gennaro again. Do I look at the others and say, there's a real good possibility? Yeah. They've got to have a real good night, though, every time against Gennaro if he's on good equipment. Yeah, I don't. That's a hard one to predict, especially since I haven't seen them, especially in their new leathers. That's the part that makes the Gumball Rally interesting for me. Is everybody's got that new set of leathers, and I remembered last year's leathers, and I have a hard time telling them apart sometimes. But I'm looking forward to the season getting underway.
How many Hawaiian shirts do you currently have in the inventory?
18. One I'm going to throw away because it's just so ugly, but I wanted to wear it once. And then a guy willed me one the other day, a few weeks back. It's got a picture of his Ferrari on it. And I mean, it's a photograph of a Ferrari on a Hawaiian shirt. And I've got to find the right night. And it's probably Ugly Hawaiian Shirt Night at Industry for that one. Although we do the same thing at Long Beach every year, the Ugly Hawaiian Shirt Contest. And people win a ride in the pace car there. It's a kind of a fun deal.
You win all kinds of things there.
Is this on like Friday or Saturday, or is this on Sunday?
Sunday morning, 9 o'clock in front of Grandstand 27. Almost everybody wins. Usually there's anywhere from 10 to 25 people entered in it. The short tracks of Southern California, especially the speedway tracks, get behind us on this one, and everybody wins tickets to some racing event. Some win tickets to multiple racing events. Top Dog last year had to choose between going to oval track driving school at Irwindale Speedway or taking a ride in the pace car next year. They chose the ride in the pace car next year.
Do you have anything else like historical?
My history goes so far back into this thing that races bleed together. I can tell you strange things like Michael Bast is a hell of a chess player. Bill Cody would have been a national champion several times if it wasn't for the Bast brothers and Rick Woods. Dwayne Stark, I don't know if you remember Dwayne Stark, but we used to call him Sugar Daddy. His daughter is really famous in the art world, yet she enjoys Speedway too. There's been an awful lot of sprint car people who love Speedway, and part of the reason they like it is you get to see the competitor. You go to a lot of, you can't tell me that a funny car at the drag strip isn't driven by a computer. Speedway, you see the whole guy make every mistake that he's going to, or her.
Have you ever driven a sprint car?
Yes. One night as an announcer, I made the mistake of qualifying one of the famous sons of a famous IndyCar winner, didn't qualify well. And I said, jokingly, well, I could do that. Wrong thing to tell a crowd at Ascot on a Saturday night. Well, I could do that. 2 weeks later, a multiple-time champion in the CRA sprint cars, Jimmy Oskey, gave me an opportunity to drive a car that's called a Hank Henry. That's the guy who built the chassis. Well known, apparently, among sprint car guys. I got to drive a Hank Henry car at Ascot, and technically, I outqualified the guy that I made the weird-ass comment about to it idles faster than you want it to go. That's the first thing that, because I mean, I've been on some racing equipment. I've driven some fast stuff, but I didn't want it to, when they push you off and it bumps off and all of a sudden it idles faster than I really wanted to go into turn one. So I had to adjust to that. But by the second 10-lap session, I was lapping Ascot in the 22-second region, which isn't bad. Don't get me wrong. The really fast guys were doing 17 seconds at the time. I was only 4 seconds a lap slower. That's a career.
Did you ever drive an Indy car or go in the two-seater?
No, but I did go to the driving schools. Turns out once they found out you were going to be the anchor of the television show, they said, oh, you've won a chance to go to our school. I said, is there any gimmicks here? No. So I went out and went to the Russell Racing School at the old Riverside International Raceway and drove Formula Fords. Enjoyed the heck out of it. I mean, if you guys who own Speedway bikes think that a Speedway motorcycle is taking money out of your wallet a lot, get into cars. You'll find out how fast you can lose all those $20 bills.
Oh, the Haunted Saloon was way above its time. And that was 8 years ago. How did that come about, the Haunted Saloon show?
The Haunted Saloon, a dream of Terry Ike Clinton. And I got thinking about it, and it was ground floor at the time of producing your own stuff for internet. And we managed to do it without a very big budget. And we were doing real well. We weren't finding any money to sponsor us, but we did get about a half a pickup truck load of whiskey from Jim Beam Distilleries. You can find it on YouTube. You just go look for the Haunted Saloon, and you'll find cowboy poetry and interviews with famous old gunfighters or the replicas thereof.
Well, you had Evil Knievel and Bruce Penhall on an episode.
Yes, we've had Sean McConnell, we have Billy Hamill, we've had Ivan Iron Man Stewart, who won Baja, but we tried to stay with cowboys and cowboy reenactors and people. I mean, do you know that there's more Wyatt Earps than there is Speedway National Champions? I mean, there's more guys own that coat and own that buntline special, which, by the way, the buntline special is a bunch of hooey. There never really was any of those long-barreled things that worked.
In 1973, you set a land speed record on a Yoshimura Kawasaki.
Yes, sir. Production, 1000 cc, the first year of the big four-cylinder. I was there to help my dad. You qualified for the records in the afternoon. Then you came back at day. The conditions were supposed to be the absolute best at dawn. So Pops went up with 3 riders and like 6 or 7 motorcycles he was going to. And the 3 riders all qualified and the motorcycles were all ready. Well, the 3 riders, who were all about this high, were out partying. They partied so hardy that they couldn't be there at dawn the next day to ride the motorcycle. And Pops Yoshimura came, do you want to ride any of these? Yeah, because I knew that there was a contingent motorcycle from Kawasaki if you set the production record. I said, I'll ride that one, because I just saw where Von Duhamel had won on, check that, he had finished second on that motorcycle at Laguna Seca. And I figured if Von Duhamel could make that thing turn corners, I could make it go straight. I was capable of that. And it was a 141 two-way average, 141 703, and stood for like 7 years.
Did you get any speed wobble going through like 100, 120?
No, there was no speed wobble. Here was the interesting thing on that, is they wanted a plug check, spark plug check on the way down. So that means that you get through the traps at full speed. And I mean, you're tucked in, you're trying to crawl under the paint to be as small a frontal area as you can. And as you get to the end of the mile, I pull the clutch, I shut the motor off, and I'm still tucked in. And I'm coasting at 140 miles an hour, but there's no speedometer. So I don't know when I can sit up. I'm just starting to get cramps, man. And I'm still coasting, and all of a sudden I decide, it's time, I'll sit up. Holy mackerel. You don't know what it's like to suddenly sit up at 125 miles an hour on a motorcycle when you're still coasting. It wants to blow you off of there.
Do you have a good sign off?
If you'd like to see the most lovely racetrack that's ever run Speedway motorcycles, come see it at Industry. And again, as far as I know, we're also going to be putting the show up on the internet. Go to industryspeedway.com, you'll find a connection.